a link to Facebook. So why?
Well, it's working though. We're live again.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Hello,
Yeah,
anyone.
just a moment, just a moment. Not there yet. Is they write you are streaming, but only now.
Hey.
Cool. Let me see. Could we? Yeah, yeah. Yep. Okay. All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Academy of Astrology UK live stream podcast 005. Oh, we already have two people waiting for us.
Hey.
That is really nice. Since we start now, it's like since we started the live stream podcast. I mean, we started like our YouTube channel get increasing, and we have more people subscribe, and we have like more people watching our our video. I have to
Fantastic.
say, yeah, I have to say, we for last few years we make lots of video, and it's very helpful, especially when you're a beginner. It's really helpful to just like take some time to check up. There's some very nice video you can like for example, people want to ask about Uranus in Taurus, and I think we make a really good video about it.
Yep.
And then also we really want to have like a answer some people's questions. So you can write it down your question on the comments so we can answer it. Oh,
Yeah.
I forget to introduce. Today with me is Marcus Patchett.
Hi,
Yeah,
Rod. That's all right.
yeah.
Hello.
I don't know
Hello.
why. I don't know why. Just like I still have to introduce.
Yeah, it's all right. It's the same. Well, we're here most weeks, so
Yes,
fine.
yes. Monday will be with us next week, and Monday and Sue will be with us next week. So, and the
Yeah.
next week will be more busy. We will mention about it later.
Yes.
How about we received one question. How about we start from there? Okay, is our friend our YouTube Helen
Subscriber.
Thank you for. I was like, what's the word? Thank you. Yeah, thank you for helping me. Yeah, subscriber ask Helen. Ask about the. I think basically she says she noticed the in the new moon chart there is the Aquarius Leo interception, and I did check. What
Yeah.
she mentioned is the new moon chart in London, and
Yes.
um, do you, Marcus, do you mind give us some idea about what mean interception
In
and what
Sure.
we do is it in astrology?
Yeah, so
Okay.
no worries. So most astrologers, most people who are somewhat familiar with astrology may know this concept, or you'll come across it at some point. And it just means when you have a house, a region of the chart, which includes more than one sign. So in this chart, which I think was this the new moon
Yeah,
chart
this
from a
new
couple of
moon
weeks
chart.
back now, or
Yes.
getting on for a couple of weeks back, 10 days or so. Yeah, you can see the question was about the third and ninth houses, and you can see on the cusp of the third house we've got Capricorn, and on
Yes.
the cusp of the fourth house we've got Pisces. So we've got the whole sign of Aquarius wedged into the third house, and opposite it, of course, because symmetrical,
Yep.
we've got Leo wedged in the ninth house between
Mhm.
Cancer on the ninth house cusp and Virgo on the 10th house cusp. Thanks, Rod. You see you doing the pointers thing.
Yes.
So the idea here is just intercepted signs just means that there is a whole sign wedged into a particular house. Now, this only works if you're using what's known as a quadrant house system.
Mhm.
And house systems, for anyone who's a total newbie to astrology, just means a way of dividing up the sky into regions, and each of those regions has a different meaning. Some of the earliest ways of dividing up the sky, it's now thought, may not, the houses may just have been based on the signs. So if you're
Mhm.
using a whole sign house system, as it's now called,
Yes.
or an equal house system, which is again just based on the signs,
Mhm.
then in that method, you wouldn't get this kind of interception going on, because it would literally be in a chart like this with Scorpio rising, then the whole sign of Scorpio in a whole sign house system would just be the first house, the whole sign of
Mhm.
Sagittarius would be the second house, the whole sign of
Yeah.
Aquarius would be the third house, and the whole sign of Aquarius would be the fourth house. So sorry, the
Mhm.
whole sign of Capricorn would be the third house, and the whole sign of Aquarius
Mhm.
would be the fourth house.
Yeah.
But in any of the methods of dividing the sky which don't follow that system, you will often end up with this situation with intercepted houses. So interpretation, I've got a few ideas, but I feel like I've been hogging the mic. So Rod, do you want to kind of say a bit about what you think, and then I'll chip in on that?
I don't know, because yes, I mean, I do use Placidus. I've been training faculty use the equal house, and I heard at this moment the whole sign house is very popular. But well, I still quite like Quadrant house, and but interestingly, I don't really pay attention on the interception. Doesn't mean I don't know about it. I know it, but I finally decide, no, I'm not going to, focus on that. I think that I heard about one way to explain it is like those planet falling into the intercepted sign or the house are not going to work. And I just feel like, yeah, maybe, I don't know. I mean, I heard people saying that. So I say, well, in my point of view, I did check a few different charts, especially for people who was born in, like a high latitude. They usually have like quite a lot of like kind of an interception, and they still work perfectly. So I say, you know what? I decide to ignore that interpretation. How about your view then?
Interesting. Yeah. So, I mean, I kind of agree with that, Rod, really. It doesn't seem to make that much practical difference in many ways. I tend to, in the way I interpret charts, I kind of do an overlay of whole sign and quadrant.
Okay.
So I'll use the whole sign because that's determined. That's like, because the way they aspect the ascendant. So it's like if in a chart with Scorpio rising like this, for example, any planet in Aquarius is going to be in a square whole sign aspect to the ascendant. So it's going to carry the same connotations of a sort of tense relationship to the ascendant.
I see.
And so it sort of carries this fourth sign general meaning, but then it's going to be specified to the third house. So in terms of interpretation, that's not really particular to intercepted signs though, so much as house systems. So an intercepted sign like this, the only difference it makes to me in interpreting a chart is it's kind of like that house then gets two rulers sometimes. So but there's the main ruler, which is the ruler of the sign on the cusp of the house, and then a secondary ruler, which is the ruler of the intercepted sign. So in this chart, like the third house, Saturn rules both the signs. So, no diff. But with the ninth house, which is the house in mundane astrology and world affairs of like overseas and higher education and knowledgeable people and the church or universities or whatever, you've got two rulers. You've got the moon, which rules the sign on the cusp, Cancer. And then you've also got the sun, which rules Leo, which is intercepted. So you'd primarily look at the moon, but you might also look at the sun as saying something to do with ninth house matters. So, but it's a secondary ruler. So the moon's going to take primacy. So it really depends on context. So if the sun was really prominent, where the moon wasn't. So if the second ruler of an intercepted, so if the ruler of the sign which was intercepted in a house was really prominent in the chart, whereas the ruler of the sign on the cusp wasn't, then it will still direct you to that house. Do you know what I mean?
So I think basically Helen asked is like the planet in this place, are they how are they going to be affected or something?
It's just going to be Saturn in the third house. So that's how I'd interpret that. Like I say, when I because I think of I kind of put a whole sign spin on it.
Okay.
It would still be primarily third house topics. I think the quadrant determines the topics. Because it's in an angular house, it's going to have a bit more power than it would if it was in Capricorn. Then it's in a cadent house or a weaker house, because the third house is supposed to be one of the weaker houses. And a cadent sign, a weaker sign, it's in a, but whereas because it's in Aquarius, it's still in the third house. It still brings about those it's talking about third house topics of like I don't know, public transport and communication services and that kind of thing. but it's going to have a bit more to say
Yeah.
because it's in an angular sign, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it is very interesting because, like, as astrology teacher, we usually will frequent this kind of question about the student ask about interception. Very interesting, especially for the beginner. They always
Yeah.
say, "Oh, how I interpret it." So some people, because that sounds quite unusual, like intercepted. Does it like lose its function, or does it like
Yeah.
lose its power? I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, that was quite interesting. When I first started, I also have question about, well, is that mean this and that? And I do my study, and also I do the chart study. I say, well, doesn't affect it for me. When I check other people, some people's chart, their planet in those intercepted place or sign or house, I was like, well, they still say something. They still work as as usual. So I
Yeah.
was like, that's my point. I say, well, I was still treated like a planet, and interpreted with the sign and house and aspects as usual.
Yeah,
That's,
totally. It's not
yeah,
that's I would agree with that. I
yeah.
think that the one slight caveat might
Okay.
be when you have, for example, uh like a planet in the rising sign, but
Mm-hmm.
in the second, in the rising house, sorry, in the ascendant, in the
Mm-hmm.
first house, or in
Mm-hmm.
any angular house, but
Mm-hmm.
in an intercepted sign. So for example, in this chart, if you
Mm.
had if for example any planet was in 5 degrees of Sagittarius,
Mm-hmm.
it would be in the first house, but the
Yeah.
second sign.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not going to have us. So if the first house is the appearance or the
Mm-hmm.
body of a person,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to have an effect, but it's not going to have as much of an effect on the person's appearance as if it was in the rising sign and house. So
Okay.
it's that's really just saying the same thing that I said before in a
Mm-hmm.
different way,
Yep.
uh, because it's like it's the house gives it the meaning,
Yep.
but the sign's relation to the ascendant gives
Mm-hmm.
it its power, if
Okay.
that makes sense.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So, okay, that is very interesting. I think from the traditional view,
Right.
so those sign on the cusps are are they more important, or are they have more
Well,
influence?
there is no one monolithic traditional view, of course, Rod. I
Okay.
mean, as you
Yes.
know, like it depends on what tradition. So in like the
Yeah.
Renaissance tradition,
Yeah.
then definitely it'd be quadrant houses. You'd
Yeah.
look at mainly the house rulers, and sometimes you'd look. We don't want to get into the weeds on this, but you could use
Mm-hmm.
the almuten rather than the ruler of the
Oh
sign.
wow.
So,
Okay.
which is very complicated. It's not that
I
complicated, but
know.
it takes a
Yeah.
while to explain. So let's not
Yeah.
go there. It's a proper. But so anyway, the Renaissance astrologers would have used the quadrant houses.
Mm-hmm.
So they would have had intercepted signs, and I think they would have interpreted them sort of in that way. Like if there's
Mm-hmm.
a sign intercepted in a house, then the planet
Mm-hmm.
that rules that sign will have some affinity or something to say about that house.
Sure.
But in Hellenic astrology,
Mm.
it's thought, we don't
Mm-hmm.
know for sure.
Mm.
Valens, it looks like an ancient Roman astrologer,
Mm-hmm.
looked like he used equal house,
Mm-hmm.
which would be like, so in this chart, if 15 degrees Scorpio
Mm-hmm.
is rising, then it'd be 15
Mm-hmm.
degrees Sagittarius is the beginning of the second cusp, 15
Mm-hmm.
degrees of Capricorn, beginning of the third
Mm-hmm.
cusp, and so on, so on, so on. And it looks like perhaps some of the authorities before then
Mm.
may have used whole sign houses, which I
Okay.
mentioned before. So it does vary through the tradition, and
Yeah.
it's not yet clear whether
Mm-hmm.
those ancient authorities, because they did use quadrant division, it's
Mm.
not yet clear exactly in what context they may have preferred them,
Okay.
So
Yeah. Well, still, all these kind of things are. I think it's very, very individual. Let me say that it's more like what kind of house system you prefer, and there is no they like. I think people like to say what is the best one, but I think that the one works for you is the best one. I think.
I would mostly, I think I would agree with that. I mean, the whole house system thing that
Mm-hmm.
we've kind of, it's my fault by talking about, but I think we would have ended up talking about houses with this anyway, wouldn't we? Because
Yeah.
it kind of goes with the topic.
Yeah.
I would agree with that in the
Mm-hmm.
sense that it depends how you think astrology works.
Yeah.
If you think it works like the planets are projecting gravitational beams down to Earth, and
Okay. Yes.
that kind of thing, it's a
Yeah.
physicalist thing,
Yeah.
then no, it's which system works most exactly.
Yeah.
I personally think that it's more of a mind machine. It's like
Yeah.
all divination. I think we observe patterns in nature, then we abstract them from nature, and the
Yep.
machine we build, the little Antikythera, the little orrery
Yeah.
we build, is in our mind. And it's the mental machine, the Mercury, because this is circular thinking, folks, but Mercury in astrology rules the mind and is also the messenger between the above and the below.
Yes.
Mercury represents astrology and traditional astrology, and it is the mind. It's the mind that actually makes astrology work. So the machine we build is in the mind. So based on that, it is about finding the system which works best for you. But Mercury has certain rules. Mercury and Saturn go on very well together. And one of Mercury's rules is that it needs to be somewhat internally consistent a little bit, but Mercury does like to change things up. So what works for one person may not necessarily work as well for another, and that's fine. So
yeah. I mean, basically, I agree with you because, well, I think I did when I was a little bit younger. When I was in uni, I studied chemical engineer or something. So I have a little bit scientific background, and then when I come to the astrology, those training is a kind of okay. I like listen people debate about is this science or not, and I just I don't want to go that too far because that is like a whole topic.
That's a whole set of rabbit holes right there.
I just don't go there. I was like, you think whatever you think. For me, I'm agree with you. I agree with Marcus. It's like for me, it's really like a symbol reading. And more symbolism things is more fun for me. It's more important in astrology rather than really to find out where is the wavelengths try to or gravity impact the Earth.
Let me be, I mean, to define that thought a little bit further, I do think astrology is a science, but it depends how you define science. It's a metaphysical science, and modern science has come to mean, I mean, you know about this, Rod, because a few years ago, the Indian Supreme Court defined astrology as a science because they're looking at it from a traditional Vedic Jyotish point of view. And it's a science. So science just means knowledge. I can't remember what the root of the word science. I think it literally means knowledge. So it's the modern so-called Western viewpoint is basically physicalist materialist. It assumes that if there is no proximate, immediate physical cause or explanation for something, it does not exist. It reminds me of that thing from the Star Wars films when he can't find, he can't find the thing on the map, and he asks the librarian, he says, if it is not on our system, it does not exist. I sometimes think the attitude of very materialistic type people is like that towards esoteric topics like astrology. And it's like, I think sometimes you have to shift your mental frame and engage with it for it to even work.
Yes. Okay. Next topic is more interesting because okay. Next topic, I'm going to bring it up this thing about the Moon Wobble. Okay. This is very interesting because it's also close between the astrology and astronomy, and then people because Moon Wobble is basically a kind of the different from the observer's angle and the moon's optic, and that's it. Basically, is how we see it. And when we look at the moon, it's look like in a place, and it's like wobbling, and that's it. It's more like what we say the retrograde, but also it's from our view. From the Earth's view, when we look the planet motion, and there's sometimes they're moving backwards on the zodiac, on the ecliptic. So
okay,
it's
so when is the moon wobbling? When is the moon wobbling?
Okay.
And what does it mean?
Okay. Let me go there. Okay. I will need some help. Okay. When is moon wobbling? That's good. Okay. Basically, it's really what should I say? It's very, very like we are going to explain the what we call eclipse season.
Okay.
Yeah. So there is a full moon wobble time each year. It's basically approximate when Sun conjunct with North Node south node, or when the sun square nodal axis. So this is the 4 time we call it Moon Wobble. Okay, but basically it's during this 4 time when you look in the moon and with the maybe telescope, more close view, or you record it, and you will see the moon was slowly a little bit swift, a wobble. It's like this.
Oh.
And it's very interesting. I mean, you can go on YouTube and type Moon Wobble, and you will see the video. Very interesting. Moon is moving like that.
Do you, because I am not familiar with this, Rod, at all. So you're the astronomer. You are and this is something that's amazing about Rod, everyone. I mean, there are many things, but this thing, he's one of the rare beasts in the world of astrology. Well, maybe not that rare, but still fairly rare, actually. An astrologer who actually also astronomizes and looks at the stars and knows where they are in the sky.
I love it. I couldn't stop to doing this kind of thing, because for me, the night sky is beautiful. I would really do everything. If I can see a beautiful night sky, I would do it.
I mean, there are many astrologers who can sort of, we can usually spot the sun and the moon and a few stars, but there are many astrologers who don't. And I'm lamentably ignorant about a lot of the constellations and stuff. So it's very impressive to me that do you know the astronomical reason why the moon looks like it's
as I explained, it's just the angle.
So it's the angle the moon is at from, because just the north node and the south node, they are, to be all technical about it, they're the places where the Earth's orbit, the angle, the plane of the Earth's orbit around the sun and the moon's orbit around the Earth intersect, right?
Yes.
So
when they are, and this is the kind of 4 point for the moon. It's like ecliptic. We have the Aries and on the equator, and the Cancer in the when it's the highest point, and the bending and then going down. So for the node is the same. So there's a north node, moon pass here, and it go north.
Yes.
And then there's a bending, and then it coming down to the south node.
South node. Yeah, that's a nice way. So from our point of view on the Earth, looking up, it's like it's like the north node. It would be like if you could see the moon's course in the sky speeded up. It would be like heading up towards the north.
Yeah.
And the point where it sort of crosses the zodiac. If you the zodiac belt, the ecliptic.
It is, of course, ecliptic.
Right, at an angle, yes. It's heading north. That's with a north node, and then when it's going diving down south again, that's the south node.
So at this 4 point, when you look at the moon, during that time, you will see the moon is like wobbling, and that's interesting because the first was astronomer discovered this, and very soon astrologer step in, say, "Oh, we also noticed that, especially mundane astrologer, notice during this time, there's usually kind of a bigger natural disaster. And the things are usually kind of more dramatic. Even the social movement, social event, political event, or economic are usually more dramatic. So that's why, in mundane astrology, financial astrology, we are very familiar with Moon Wobble, but the problem is how long it would last.
And I have a fly to throw in that ointment, possibly. Maybe not, but it would make sense that there might be some astrological quote unquote effects or indications going on at that time, because if the moon wobble only occurs when the sun is either at one of the nodes or squaring the nodes, then that might be symbolically descriptive of the effect rather than the moon just wobbling a bit. Do you know what I mean?
That's what we talking about before. Remember, you either thinking in a symbolic way Or you may be thinking, oh, scientific way because the moon is wobbling, so everything is wobbling.
Yeah.
No, it's very clear when you go back. Thank you. Bring us back to astrology. Because when you go back to astrology, it's related to node.
Yeah.
And the nodal axis, and also like when it's in the bending, is trigger the square the both sides of node. It's kind of a gateway in the astrology. So like a north node is like move from up to the north hemisphere, and the south node they move down. And also is the the node point is the joint point of the two the ecliptic.
It's like a sort of crisis or a watershed point, right?
Yes, yes, and it's a crossroad. Some people say it's a
crossroads. That's a good decision.
Yes, so that's why when sun is around this point, it either changes the direction in an imagination way. Is either cross the road, cross the threshold. And it's very interesting. So we are kind of thinking about the event. Such a big event usually happen during this time. And then usually you will hear about the mundane astrologer or the financial astrologer talking about this, and just different way to say how long it will last. There is a way to say, some people say 2 weeks before the sun exact conjunct the node or exact square the node. 2 weeks before, 1 week after.
How did they arrive at that, Rod? What's the reason?
That's the interesting. No one explained to you. and then it's more interesting. I find another way. I think I check it because sometimes it overlapped with so-called eclipse season.
Okay.
Yeah, because when the sun and moon is around the nodal axis is eclipse.
Yeah, of course. Yes.
So that is another thing why so-called moon wobble is somehow so big and related to usually say disaster, because it is eclipse season. And very interestingly, I think Benedict Brady, I really love her. She's amazing. Yes. Okay, she gave this eclipse season 36 days, 18 days before the sun conjunct the node, and the 18 day after. So 36 days. She say this 30. Basically,
that makes a lot of sense. I like Bernadette from what I've read. I've met her once, a few years ago, but certainly the books that she's written, very logical. So good thinking.
So when I say 18 day, you immediately know what's the reason behind.
Okay, well, maybe not. Would it be the eclipse cycle, right? Presumably.
Yes, and also I think as the sun's ray in the traditional way, right?
Yes, the orb of the sun. Yes.
So I guess the so-called 2 weeks before, 1 week after, maybe it's basically based on this, but twist a little bit.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Just to explain that, folks, the orb of the orbs, like for anyone who's not yet that familiar with astrology, in traditional astrology, every planet was said to have an orb, that is a number of degrees either side, where it can sort of affect planets or bodies in the sky near it. And because the sun is obviously the brightest object in our sky, it had the widest orb. So the sun was said to have an orb of around 19 degrees, which meant that it can touch things on, depending who you read, sort of around 9 degrees either side of it, or something, 9 to 10 degrees either side of it, something like that. 8.5, it varies. But it's so because so the idea there is that when the sun is close enough to the nodes that its light is almost reaching it, you're going to start seeing some effect. So it may not be the moon wobbling a little bit visually in the sky so much as the fact that, as Rod said, the sun arriving at the nodes is indicating that we're entering eclipse season.
Yes, and this is one. Another part of a moon wobble would say sun square both sides of a node. And I think for modern astrologers' view, we call it bending. It's changing direction from the highest point and toward to southwards. So I think it's another changing direction. So I mean, basically, if we can explain either way. Some astrologer prefer say moon is wobbling so close like gravity and this and that, so things is so dramatic. Why not if that's what you believe? And in the symbolic reading, I think it is the nodal axis and also the eclipses. That we should focus.
And to give the Moon Wobble fan crew their due, it's like the moon appearing to wobble in the sky. If you assume that the moon represents the people, and the people's mood and people's security and the health of the people and bodies and all the other things that the moon represents, it just shaking a bit in the sky shows that things have shaken up a little bit. So it's just another. I'm not discounting that symbolism. It's just that sometimes I'm like, why reinvent the wheel, you know?
Well, I mean I don't know. I don't want to go that pit.
No.
Sometimes
Anyway,
we can be very funny with that.
We're getting tight on time, I think.
Yes. So this is the moon wobble. So basically, at this moment, we see from next week until the mid of June is so-called moon wobble. So we are expecting more dramatic event happen. But interesting, like what Benedict Brady say, if you have the solar eclipse in the either side of eclipse season, then this eclipse season may be extended.
Oh.
Yeah, like as I say, the moon wobble or eclipse season will end around the mid-June. But we have a solar eclipse on 10th of June. I don't think by mid of June, like 15th of June, everything will coming down. I don't think so. I will give another week or two.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So can we say anything specific about this moon wobble?
No. The interesting thing is it's like you are just expecting disaster.
I'm not sure that seems a little heavy for something that's not actually.
I know it's like when we try to determine it, sometimes it's more difficult. I'd rather just go to the study eclipse chart.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
eclipses are just much more explicit. Like if there's an eclipse, by nature it's going to be disruptive, and the chart itself will tell you the nature and the results of that, the nature of and the results of that disruption.
Yeah, but I will still use the moon wobble time as a kind of a specific intensive timing.
That's great.
Yes.
Okay.
Also, or prefer to call it eclipse season.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the reason we're spending a bit of time on the moon wobble tonight, folks, is because this week there's no major astrological activity going on. I mean, it's not
next week.
Next week we got a few things to talk about.
Oh dear, yes. We have like a so-called when we call it the moon wobble, but the very very basic. We have like a Saturn start to stationary.
Yeah,
and then followed by Mercury.
Yep.
And we have, I think this is next week.
Yeah, next, and the sun's changing sign into Gemini. That will be on the day of the podcast as well.
Yes.
And the Mercury stationing retrograde will be doing so while squaring Neptune. So there's a few interesting things.
Yes, and that is kind of quite pretty heavy. I mean I like this. I mean, well, yes, you're right. You yeah, but for me it's kind of you added layer and the layer. For me it's like already I'm focused on moon wobble. Okay, I'm already wobbling.
Fair enough.
And now you tell me there is outer planet Saturn is going to stationary. That's for me. For us mundane astrologer, another things to focus on.
Yes.
Another we can you can basically just like another disaster things. stationary.
That is a trope among astrologers to immediately go down the massive international disaster sort of
I'm
end of the
one of
world
them.
scenario.
I'm one of them, to be honest. But it's just I'm quite happy to delineate like with Saturn stationary. I will focus on Saturn's meaning, and that's it.
Yes,
Yeah,
I think that's the key, isn't it? You just got to delineate, because there are some things in the sky that are traditionally really difficult, like usually difficult aspects between Mars and Saturn on angles or prominent. They're difficult, and modern configurations like the Saturn Pluto, which kicked off the whole pandemic last year, that's never fun. There are certain things that are a bit pants, but then there are others like Saturn turning retrograde. Well, that happens like twice a year normally.
Yes. But usually for mundane astrology, that's kind of intensive too.
Oh, it's an important time.
Yes,
so we'll be talking about it.
Yes. Yeah. So next week, we're probably going to focus on like a Sun in Gemini, very basic level, very interesting level, and Saturn stationary and the Mercury stationary and retrograde. I think that will be our next week's topic. So thank you, everyone. And this is our today's live stream podcast.
Thank you for listening. And just like we said last week, if you have any like comments or questions or things, given that we've got so many topics to talk about next week, I don't know but just leave any comments and questions, because we'll try and get round to them. And it's great having that food for thought. So
okay, thank you, everyone. Don't forget, subscribe our channel and leave any comment. Thank you very much. See you next week. Bye.
Bye.